The terminal at LAX buzzed with its usual frantic energy as Leonardo DiCaprio made his way toward Gate 47. He'd spent the last 14 hours on set for Martin Scorsese's latest film, a grueling shoot that had demanded everything from him physically and emotionally. His body felt like lead, his mind foggy with exhaustion as he navigated through the crowd, baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. Just need to make it to New York, he murmured to himself, shifting his carry-on bag to his other shoulder. The weight of it made him stumble slightly, his gait uneven as he approached the boarding line. Emily Chen had been working as a flight attendant for American Airlines for 12 years. She prided herself on her professionalism and attention to detail. More importantly, she took the safety protocols of her job with absolute seriousness. When she noticed the man in the baseball cap and sunglasses swaying slightly as he handed over his boarding pass, alarm bells immediately went off in her mind. "Sir," she said firmly, studying his face more carefully and recognizing him instantly, despite his attempts at anonymity. "I'm sorry, but I don't believe you're in a condition to board this flight." Leonardo blinked, taking a moment to process her words. "Excuse me?" "You appear to be intoxicated," Emily stated plainly, loud enough that several nearby passengers turned to look. "Our policy is clear, we cannot allow visibly intoxicated passengers to board." Leonardo's face flushed with embarrassment as he realized what was happening. "I'm not drunk," he explained quietly. "I just finished a 14-hour shoot. I'm exhausted." Emily remained unmoved. "I'm sorry, Mr. DiCaprio, but I cannot in good conscience allow you to board in this state. Company policy is very strict about this." By now, several passengers had recognized him, and phones were discreetly, and not so discreetly, being aimed in his direction. Leonardo felt a headache beginning to form behind his eyes. The last thing he needed was to become the center of a viral airport incident. "Is there a problem here?" A man in a crisp suit approached, the gate manager, judging by his badge. "This passenger appears to be intoxicated," Emily explained professionally. "I've informed him that he cannot board in this condition." "I'm not intoxicated," Leonardo repeated, trying to keep his voice even. "I've been working all day. I haven't had a drop of alcohol." The manager looked torn between following protocol and not wanting to offend one of Hollywood's biggest stars. "Perhaps we could step aside for a moment, Mr. DiCaprio?" Leonardo nodded, grateful to move away from the growing crowd of onlookers. As they stepped to the side, his longtime bodyguard and assistant, who had been checking on their luggage, hurried over. "What's going on?" his assistant asked, immediately stepping into problem-solving mode. "There seems to be a misunderstanding," the manager explained. "Our attendant has concerns about Mr. DiCaprio's condition for flying. He's been on set since 5 a.m., the assistant explained. "He's exhausted, not intoxicated. I've been with him all day." The manager nodded, looking relieved. "I understand. Perhaps a quick assessment would resolve this?" For the next 15 minutes, Leonardo waited patiently as the airline staff conferred. His assistant made calls, provided the day's schedule as evidence, and eventually, the manager returned with an apologetic expression. "Mr. DiCaprio, we sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding. You're clear to board if you'd like." Leonardo glanced at the gate, where Emily was still standing, her posture rigid with professional determination. He could see the flight was nearly done boarding, and the incident had already drawn more attention than he wanted. Most importantly, he understood something fundamental: she had been doing her job, prioritizing the safety of everyone on that flight over celebrity status. "Thank you," he said to the manager, "but I think I'll take the next flight." His assistant looked surprised. "Leo, we can make this one." "They're holding it." Leonardo shook his head. "It's fine. Get our bags, please. I'll book us on the next one." As his assistant hurried off, Leonardo approached Emily, who appeared tense, likely expecting a confrontation or complaint. "I want to thank you," he said softly, surprising her. Thank me, she asked, confusion evident in her expression. For taking your job seriously. For not letting who I am influence your dedication to safety. That's rare these days. Emily's professional mask slipped for a moment, revealing relief. I was just following protocol, Mr. DiCaprio. Call me Leo, he said with a small smile. And I'm serious. Too many people look the other way when they shouldn't. He paused. When's your break? After this flight departs, I have 30 minutes. Leonardo nodded. Perfect. I have something I'd like to give you, if that's all right. 45 minutes later, Leonardo sat in the first-class lounge, waiting for his rebooked flight. Emily entered cautiously, still in her uniform but clearly on her break. She approached his table with a mixture of curiosity and professional caution. You wanted to see me? Leonardo gestured to the chair across from him. On the table sat a cup of coffee and a book, a first edition of The Great Gatsby, that he happened to have in his carry-on, as he was rereading it for inspiration for an upcoming role. I thought you might like these, he said simply. The coffee is whatever the barista recommended as their specialty. And the book, well, I've always felt a connection to Gatsby. Emily sat down slowly, looking at the offerings. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to, he replied. May I? He asked, gesturing to the book. When she nodded, he opened the cover and took out a pen, inscribing something on the title page before sliding it back across the table. Emily read his message. Asterisk, to Emily, thank you for reminding me that integrity matters more than status. Your dedication makes the skies safer for all of us. Best wishes, Leonardo DiCaprio. Asterisk. She looked up, visibly moved. I was just doing my job. And that's exactly why this matters, Leonardo said earnestly. Too often in my world, people don't do their jobs when it comes to someone like me. They make exceptions, look the other way. But safety isn't about exceptions. Emily took a sip of the coffee, perhaps to hide her emotion. This is delicious. Good, Leonardo smiled. Consider it a thank you for taking care of your passengers, even the difficult, exhausted ones who can't walk straight after too many hours pretending to be someone else. They chatted for the remainder of her break, about her 12 years with the airline, about his current film, about their shared love of classic literature. By the time she had to return to work, something unexpected had happened. Mutual respect had formed between two people from entirely different worlds. 3 months later, Emily was working a routine flight from Los Angeles to London when a flight attendant from first class approached her during their break. There's a passenger in 2A who specifically requested this be given to you, the attendant said, handing Emily a small, elegantly wrapped package. Puzzled, Emily carefully opened it to find a framed photograph from Leonardo DiCaprio's latest film premiere. In the image, he stood on the red carpet, smiling broadly. What caught her attention, however, was his coffee cup, clearly visible in his hand with "Emily, thanks for keeping us safe" written on it in black marker. Accompanying the photo was a note. Asterisk Emily, the film we were shooting that exhausting day has its premiere next month. I've enclosed 2 VIP tickets if you'd like to attend. Your professionalism that day at the gate has become something of a legend among my team, a reminder that doing the right thing matters, even when, especially when, it's uncomfortable. Thank you again for doing your job so well. Leo. After their coffee break, Leonardo headed toward the customer service desk to confirm his seat on the next flight to New York. The exhaustion still weighed heavily on his shoulders, but there was something oddly refreshing about this unexpected detour in his day. As he waited in line, he noticed several passengers from the original flight giving him curious glances. News traveled fast in an airport. His phone buzzed with a text from his director, "Where are you? Thought you'd be in the air by now." Leonardo typed a quick response, "Flight delay of sorts. Taking the next one. I'll explain later." When he reached the counter, the agent recognized him immediately, her eyes widening slightly before she composed herself into professional calm. "How can I help you, Mr. DiCaprio?" "I need to book the next flight to New York, please. I was supposed to be on the one that just left." She looked puzzled. "But weren't you?" "I heard that." "It was a misunderstanding," Leonardo said with a gentle smile. "Your colleague was doing her job. I respect that." The agent nodded, typing quickly. "The next flight leaves in 3 hours. Would you like me to book you in first class?" "That would be perfect, thank you." As she processed his new ticket, Leonardo couldn't help but reflect on what had just happened. The incident could have gone very differently. He'd seen other celebrities throw tantrums over far less, leveraging their fame to bully staff into submission. He'd always prided himself on not being that guy, but today had tested that resolve in a way he hadn't experienced before. "Here you are, Mr. DiCaprio," the agent said, handing him his new boarding pass. "Gate 32, boarding begins at 4:15 p.m. "Thank you," he replied, accepting the ticket. "By the way, is there a bookstore in this terminal?" Leonardo spent the next hour browsing the airport bookstore, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. Despite his attempt at anonymity, he noticed the occasional double-take from fellow shoppers. One teenage girl approached hesitantly, asking for a photo, which he politely declined with an apologetic smile, explaining he was having a personal day. To his surprise, she nodded understanding and wished him a good flight. He found himself in the classics section, fingering the spines of books he'd read for film research or personal pleasure. When his hand landed on The Great Gatsby, he smiled at the coincidence. His portrayal of Jay Gatsby had been one of his most challenging and rewarding roles, exploring the facade of wealth and the desperate hunger for acceptance that lay beneath it. Leonardo purchased the book, along with several others, and made his way to a quiet corner of the first-class lounge. The 3-hour wait would give him time to decompress before the next flight. He ordered a sparkling water and opened his laptop, intending to review some scripts his agent had sent, but found his mind drifting back to the encounter with Emily. There was something about her uncompromising professionalism that had struck a chord. In his world, people bent rules for him constantly, sometimes before he even asked. Restaurants would clear tables, hotels would upgrade rooms, people would part like the Red Sea when he walked through public spaces. Most of the time, he barely noticed it anymore, it had become the background radiation of his existence. But occasionally, moments like today's reminded him of the strange bubble he lived in, and how rarely that bubble was punctured by authentic human interaction. His phone buzzed again, his assistant this time. "Everything okay? Driver in New York is getting antsy." Leonardo texted back, "Tell him to go home. Taking later flight. We'll get a car at the airport." "Problem with the flight?" Leonardo paused, considering how to explain. Finally, he typed, "No problem. Just a reminder that I'm a person, not just a name. We'll explain when I see you." He put his phone away and took a sip of water, enjoying the rare feeling of having nowhere to be and nothing urgent to do. The impromptu break in his schedule felt oddly liberating. In another part of the airport, Emily Chen was finishing her shift report, carefully documenting the incident with the famous passenger. Her supervisor had been understanding but cautious. "You're sure he was intoxicated?" he'd asked for the 3rd time. Because denying boarding to Leonardo DiCaprio is the kind of thing that gets attention. "I made a judgment call based on his physical state," Emily had replied firmly. His celebrity status wasn't relevant to that decision. Now, as she gathered her things to leave for the day, she wondered if she'd see the incident mentioned on social media or entertainment news. These things had a way of spinning out of control. She hoped the actor wouldn't take it personally or, worse, complain to the airline. As she walked toward the employee exit, Emily was surprised to see Leonardo sitting alone in the first-class lounge, reading a book. She hesitated, then decided to keep walking. Their interaction was over, there was no need to prolong it. But as she passed the glass partition, he looked up and caught her eye. After a moment's hesitation, he raised his hand in a small wave. Emily nodded professionally in acknowledgement and continued on her way. That could have been the end of it, a brief, unusual encounter between two people from vastly different worlds. But as Emily reached the exit, she felt a tap on her shoulder. "Excuse me," said a voice she recognized as belonging to Leonardo's assistant. "Mr. DiCaprio was wondering if you might have a moment before you leave." Emily checked her watch. Her son's baseball practice wasn't for another 2 hours. "All right," she said cautiously. The assistant led her back to the lounge, where Leonardo stood to greet her, looking more composed than he had earlier but still visibly tired. "I hope I'm not keeping you," he said. "I just wanted to thank you properly." Emily blinked in surprise. "Thank me?" "For doing your job without regard for who I am," he explained. "That's rarer than you might think." Emily wasn't sure how to respond. "I was just following protocol, Mr. DiCaprio." "Leo," he corrected with a small smile. "And I know you were. That's precisely why I wanted to thank you." He gestured to the coffee and book on the table. "I got these for you. The barista recommended their special blend, and, well, the book is something that means a lot to me personally." Emily looked at the offerings, a cup of premium coffee and a first-edition copy of The Great Gatsby. "This is very generous, but not necessary," she said. "I insist," Leonardo replied. "Consider it my way of acknowledging that you were right to question my state. I was exhausted, not intoxicated, but the principle remains, safety should always come before status." Reluctantly, Emily sat down. As Leonardo signed the book with a personal message, she took a sip of the coffee, which was indeed excellent. "May I ask you something?" Leonardo said as he handed her the signed book. "Of course. How long have you been a flight attendant?" 12 years next month." Leonardo nodded thoughtfully. "And in those 12 years, has it gotten easier or harder to stand your ground when necessary?" Emily considered the question carefully. "Neither, I suppose. It's always challenging to potentially inconvenience or upset a passenger. But ensuring safety isn't about being liked, it's about being responsible. That's a perspective more people in my industry could benefit from," Leonardo said with a rueful smile. "The entertainment world runs on being liked. Sometimes at the expense of what's right or true." They talked for another 20 minutes, about her career, about his current film project, about their shared love of classic literature. As they spoke, Emily was struck by how normal he seemed, tired, thoughtful, engaged, nothing like the larger-than-life persona she'd seen on screen. "I should let you go," Leonardo said eventually, noticing the time. "Thank you for indulging my impromptu coffee invitation." "Thank you for the book and coffee," Emily replied, standing to leave. "And, for not being difficult about what happened earlier." Leonardo smiled. "We all need people in our lives who see us as people, not symbols or obstacles or opportunities. Today, you saw me as just another passenger who might pose a safety risk." I found that strangely refreshing. As Emily walked away with her signed book and the memory of a surprisingly genuine conversation, she reflected that in 12 years of flying, this would certainly rank as her most unusual passenger interaction. Later that evening, as Leonardo's rescheduled flight approached New York, he found himself thinking about the day's unexpected detour. He'd called his director to explain the delay, expecting impatience, but instead received understanding. Honestly, the director had said, "It might be good for you to have a forced break. You've been pushing yourself too hard lately." Perhaps that was true. The demanding schedule of back-to-back projects had left little time for reflection or genuine human connection. Today's incident with Emily had been a stark reminder of how rarely people in his position were treated like ordinary citizens, with all the accountability that entailed. As the plane began its descent into JFK Airport, Leonardo opened the notebook where he jotted ideas for future projects. On a fresh page, he wrote, Character study, celebrity confronted with ordinary rules and restrictions. Initial anger/resistance gives way to appreciation for normal human interaction. Possible themes: authenticity in artificial world, privilege as isolation, value of meaningful connections outside the bubble. Below that, he added, inspired by airport incident, flight attendant who didn't care who I was, only that I followed the same rules as everyone else. It wasn't fully formed yet, but there was something there, a kernel of truth about fame and isolation that he hadn't explored before. Whether it would become his next film or simply remain a personal reflection, Leonardo knew the encounter had affected him more deeply than he'd expected. As the wheels touched down on the runway, he closed his notebook and prepared to re-enter his high-profile life, the waiting car, the luxury hotel, the early call time tomorrow. But something had shifted subtly in his perspective, a small crack in the protective bubble that both sheltered and isolated him from the world. Sometimes, he reflected, it takes being denied something you take for granted to appreciate the value of being treated just like everybody else. In Seattle, Emily placed the signed copy of The Great Gatsby on her bookshelf, still somewhat amazed by the day's events. Her husband had been skeptical until she showed him the inscription. To Emily, thank you for reminding me that integrity matters more than status. Your dedication makes the skies safer for all of us. Best wishes, Leonardo DiCaprio. As she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Leonardo DiCaprio spotted at LAX, sources say actor denied boarding on earlier flight. Emily sighed, realizing the incident had indeed made its way to the gossip sites. She opened the article cautiously, expecting exaggeration or outright fabrication. Instead, she was surprised to read. Representatives for DiCaprio confirmed that the actor was briefly delayed at LAX when a vigilant flight attendant expressed concern about his physical state. Leonardo had been filming for 14 hours straight and was visibly exhausted, his spokesperson explained. He completely respects the flight attendant's dedication to passenger safety and chose to take a later flight after the misunderstanding was clarified. He commends the airline staff for their professionalism and commitment to treating all passengers equally. Industry insiders expressed surprise at DiCaprio's gracious response, as many celebrities might have reacted differently to such a delay. Emily smiled and turned off her phone. In an industry where customer complaints were far more common than compliments, it was nice to have her professional judgment validated rather than questioned. She thought about their conversation in the lounge, how genuine he had seemed when thanking her for treating him like anyone else. It was strange to think that for someone like Leonardo DiCaprio, being held to the same standards as everyone else was a rare and refreshing experience rather than an expected part of daily life. As she drifted off to sleep, Emily reflected that while she would likely never see the famous actor again, their brief encounter had reinforced something she had long believed: principles should never bend for status, and doing the right thing, even when difficult, even when facing one of the most famous men in the world, was always worth it. The coffee had been excellent, the signed book would make a great story for years to come, but the most valuable thing Leonardo DiCaprio had given her was the confirmation that her professional integrity mattered, perhaps especially when applied to those who rarely encountered it. On the other side of the country, Leonardo entered his hotel suite, immediately loosening his tie and kicking off his shoes. The exhaustion from the marathon filming session still lingered in his muscles, but his mind felt surprisingly clear. He walked to the window, looking out at the New York skyline glittering in the darkness. So much of his life was spent moving between similarly luxurious spaces, film sets, private jets, five-star hotels, with teams of people clearing the path ahead of him. It was easy, in such a life, to forget what it felt like to be told no, to face the same rules and restrictions as everyone else. Today's encounter with Emily had been a small window into a different reality, one where his name and face didn't automatically open doors or bend regulations. There had been something strangely grounding about it, a rare moment of authentic human interaction in a life increasingly defined by its opposite. Leonardo took out his phone and sent a quick message to his assistant, find out which airline that flight attendant works for. I want to send a letter to her supervisors commending her professionalism. It was a small gesture, perhaps, but it felt important to ensure that Emily's adherence to protocol, even when facing a celebrity, was recognized as the asset it truly was. As he prepared for bed, Leonardo found himself thinking about his next role, a character struggling to find meaning in a world that constantly affirmed his specialness while isolating him from genuine connection. Perhaps today's unexpected encounter had given him some valuable insight into that struggle. In the strange ecosystem of celebrity, being treated like everyone else had become the rarest experience of all. And for that brief, refreshing reminder of normalcy, Leonardo was genuinely grateful to a flight attendant who had simply done her job, regardless of who he was. Sometimes, he reflected as sleep began to claim him, the most meaningful interactions are the ones where your name matters less than your humanity. And in a life where the opposite was so often true, that was a gift worth treasuring. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy this video and learned a lesson. I would be grateful for your likes. Also don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.